What is going on, guys? It's Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today I wanted to talk about some of the biggest stories that are happening right now and then lead into our live show, which will be right after this over on Marfoogle TV. First of all, there's some things coming to light. Obviously, the spy balloons have had media coverage like no other for the last 2 weeks. And there was some very strange things coming out, and people are obviously asking a whole lot of questions. So let me read a part of this, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that in just a second here. But it said over the weekend, U.S. fighter jets downed three unidentified objects over Alaska, Canada's Yukon, and Lake Huron. Last week, jets fired a Sidewinder missile at what officials said was a Chinese surveillance balloon floating over Myrtle Beach. And that was, of course, after it floated over the entire country. Which, again, if you're playing 4D chess and if you're trying to get the majority of people to believe something, I don't think it would be that hard for them to super confuse people into actually super believing something that they wanted you to believe, but when people actually think that they're believing in the alternate theory, right? Because one thing I want to point out is that first one is the only one that people saw. And people saw it with their own eyes. People got video of it all over the country. After that, all of these other ones, they said that they have no proof of. They have no debris, they have no nothing. And again, the multiple alternate theories are, well, they don't want us to see it. It's UFOs. There's an actual alien invasion going on. There's a fake alien invasion going on. There's all these things happening. Or it is actually China sending over these things, and they are surveilling all of the NATO countries, which that does... that could very well be the option. We're going to talk about it in a second, but Romania and Moldova both report these things in their sky. So this is just getting absolutely absurd. But I want to point out, it says it is China that has a high-altitude surveillance balloon program for intelligence collection that it has used to violate the sovereignty of the U.S. and over 40 countries across 5 continents. Now, this has been verified through multiple people, including skeptics, as far as, yes, they do have a program with these balloons. But just wait. It says, we don't know if America has floated spy balloons over mainland China, but portraying China as being unique in its interest in surveillance balloon is misleading. It's not absurd to suggest that the U.S. is using high-altitude surveillance balloon or sees opportunity in them. In fact, the Pentagon has a long history of investigating balloon technology, not just as a surveillance platform, but even to deliver biological boom booms. So there's actual evidence that we have talked about these to deliver biological stuff. That's a scary thought in itself. And interest continues today. These tests have often been confused for UFOs. In 2019, the National Weather Service reported seeing that something strange in the skies above Kansas City. People thought that they had witnessed UFOs, but it was actually a DARPA balloon project. The Pentagon's Advanced Research Department and its testing of its adaptable lighter-than-air, ALTA, which we covered on our show. The goal of ALTA is to develop high-altitude balloons capable of traveling great distances or even stay in one spot. The surveillance possibilities of such balloons are obvious, although ALTA's project manager told the MIT Technology Review in 2018 that they could not discuss the military applications. So I just want to point out that we do know about the DARPA ALTA, and if you think about it, and if you think about where we are headed as a society, just to give you an example, I was watching something about this woman who ended up taking the life of her own child. And what was so crazy is after she basically went somewhere the day before with her kid, what was crazy to me is they had compiled everywhere she went that day, and they used it from the second she got out of her apartment into her elevator, out of her elevator, out the front door, then down the street, then down at the store, then back. There was not one place where there was a blind spot, and these were all different cameras of different places, and they had compiled basically every single place that this woman had gone. And this isn't America. Remember, China has surveillance on all of their people. They have facial recognition, all of this, and that's where we're headed. We have Walmarts with facial recognition and cameras, and we're constantly reminded that we are on camera, right? And most people have just kind of said, oh, well, I don't care. As long as I'm not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter to me. But now, think about the possibilities if we have our own. I mean, this is straight out of a Nicolas Cage movie. I swear they had one that shows the future of of these Predator drones flying over the US and monitoring us instead of somebody else. But this is something that it's so high up that you could barely see, if you even see it at all. Heck, they paint it light blue or they paint it white, given the circumstances of our sky 99% of the time, then you're not going to see this thing. And it would see you. So it's not, I will say, the first one that everybody saw and confirmed, is that something that they didn't want people to see? Is that something that they did not want to have be a big deal? Maybe there was a technical glitch and it went lower than it should have and people started seeing this thing? Or have these things been above us the whole time, surveilling the U.S. citizens? Are these recording conversations with some sort of new technology mic? Who knows? But again, this is something that should be asked. There's also the most, very likely we are now in a cold conflict with China. We are in basically a hot conflict with Russia through proxy. And of course, we have Iran and North Korea and all of these other places that are kind of jumping into place. So this is really, really getting sketchy. It says that Romania, Moldova both report strange objects in their skies. Romania briefly scrambled military jets. So remind you, if you just forget about the balloons for a second, you have more jets scrambled all over the world and all over the U.S. out of nowhere. If you're a civilian, everybody's seeing these jets scramble to respond to something, which they keep saying are these balloons. I just have everybody do a thought exercise for a second. What if it's not what they're telling us? And what if there are things going on that they're not ready to tell us, that it is almost go time? And all of these other signs, like the scanning of Hawaii, the explosion in space where this Russian satellite blew up. What if that's not actually blowing up at all? What if that broke into pieces and that's part of their actual mission? What if this thing was supposed to break into 85 pieces and spin around the world and knock down satellites? I will say this, last night we covered a massive outage of almost all of the cell carriers. T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon all went out at the same time among all of their subsidiaries, like all of their little companies that basically use their cell towers. All of them had this huge outage in major cities. Are these all cyber events happening because we're already at conflict? I partially believe so, and as far as the balloons, I don't know what to think about the balloons, but when they're called balloons or when they're called this, nobody really bats an eye. Everybody's now used to it. Nobody's afraid of these things. They're just pissed off that, JB didn't do this or JB didn't do that. I don't think JB has much to do with this. Our prez and whatever else, I don't think that they did all of these other events to make him look good or to get him a better approval rating. His approval rating has been in the toilet for the whole time. I mean, there's just no way. But even with his own side, people are like, oh, okay. And they're just, I think most people are just trying to justify why they, picked it or picked him. I don't know. Or they feel like they have to defend their decision. I don't know. But it says Romania briefly scrambled military jets. Neighboring Moldova temporarily closed its airspace. Here's another key. Like I said the other night, some are even saying that these might be objects coming into our atmosphere and hitting Earth. That's, again, that's a strange one, but look they keep closing airspace all over the world. Even China is saying that they're going to be closing their airspace and taking these things down. It's like the incidents occurred at around midday local time and briefly raised concerns in the two Eastern European countries, both which border UKR and have been affected by Vlad's conflict. So there's kind of a common denominator. All of these places are involved in this NATO kind of Vlad conflict. It says Romania's defense ministry said it deployed 2 jets that are under NATO command to its southeastern skies to seek an aerial object that it described as being small with characteristics similar to a weather balloon. It had been detected initially by radar systems in Romanian airspace at an altitude of about 11,000 meters or about 36,000 feet, which is exactly where the planes fly as well. If that truly was something, that would be a really horrible altitude because that's a lane where the normal planes are flying. And then the Russian nuclear bear bombers fly near Alaska as Putin taunts U.S. days after object was taken down in the UFO storm. It said that Vlad has said that it has flown 2 of its Tu-95MS strategic missile bombers near Alaska in a show of strength to the West. which they always say it's a show of strength, right? By the way, we are so desensitized by these things coming nearer, by these things going right outside of our areas, all of this. It's always a show of strength until it's an actual attack. So I just want to point that out. Now that it is so desensitized, that's also part of strategy. Take China, for example, constantly sending 30, 40, 50 jets in and doing all of these things. Now, the actual Taiwanese people, they don't even bat an eyelash when they hear about this stuff. They are completely complacent with this whole thing because they're like, oh, they're just practicing, they're doing it. The one day that it's actually real, it's crazy because they get to practice, but they also catch them by surprise when they finally do it. It's kind of like the boy who cries wolf. If their newspapers are telling them that China is coming over their airspace all day, every single day, everybody's going, oh, yeah, sure they are. Oh, okay. And then when it finally happens and their lights go out and all of a sudden they start hearing artillery, they're going to be caught off guard, even though they have had this stuff going on the whole time. I feel like that's the same way with Hawaii and the Navy ships, the surveillance, the spies in every country, in every NATO country right now. They have basically desensitized people to the fact that we are in some sort of conflict that is somehow being hidden in most ways. All of these cyber events are saying that they're technical glitches. There's only so many technical glitches before people catch on. So just keep that in mind. And once people catch on, people are going to start prepping and people are going to start grabbing extra stuff. People are going to, and they'll catch on way late. You guys have the very great opportunity of knowing this and following our community. And I'm not just talking mine. All of our peers are saying the same thing. You guys had the opportunity to prepare way before everybody else. Meanwhile, while you prepare, they're telling you that you're crazy. At the same time, this is all going down right now. And people are so confused, so conflicted that they're just not doing anything. They're frozen. They're speechless. It says, in the images, the Russian aeroplanes can be seen preparing for takeoff from an undisclosed location at night. The Russian MS-95s flying above neutral waters. And it said that this comes after repeated threats by Russian officials and propagandists of using nuclear weapons amid deep east-west tension over the conflict in Ukraine. Now, I want to also remind you, if we go back to January 9th, no, was it? Yes, it was January 9th when the General SVR, this telegram that is supposedly the equivalent of Russian CIA, said that they were in a meeting. One person was in a meeting with Vlad, and they basically put out all these very specific kind of cliff notes. They said, on the 18th, there will be a mobilization that starts. It's going to be a full mobilization. They're possibly going to declare martial law at one point in February. There's going to be practices to evacuate leadership in Russia, and the first 2 weeks of this mobilization will be somewhat covert. On the 18th, when that happened, it actually, there was stories coming out, there was information, and it turned out that he was mobilizing up to 500,000 soldiers. And these were the real soldiers. These were not conscripts. These were not old tanks. These were not old guns. Were everything all new, the actual military, which, again, I don't think UK would even fought until this point. So they were right on that, or at least it seems like they were. But the other events in that General SVR are quite alarming because they said that there would be a big event around the time of the anniversary of the invasion, which would be February 24th. We are now 10 days away. And in that next 10 days, we might see something. And at the same time as that, you have nuclear bombers flying outside of Alaska. And of course, now they say that Dutch F-35s intercepted 3 Russian military aircraft over Poland. Netherlands Defense Ministry said 2 Dutch F-35 fighters intercepted a formation of 3 Russian military aircraft over Poland and escorted them out. The Netherlands Defense Ministry said in a statement late on Monday. The then unknown aircraft approached the Polish NATO areas of responsibility from Kaliningrad, according to Reuters' translation of the ministry's statement. Kaliningrad is a Russian Baltic coast enclave located between NATO and European Union members, Poland and Lithuania. It says, quote, after identification, it turned out to be 3 aircraft, a Russian IL-20M Kut-A, and escorted by 2 Su-27 flankers. The Dutch F-35 escorted the formation from a distance and handed over the escort to NATO partners. So essentially, they got them out, and then NATO jets came in and then finished the way out. So you have a lot of different actions. This was a quick update on these actions. Make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com/prep. If you don't have extra food and water, I'd highly recommend getting stuff like that in bulk. Well, you still can, of course, get it for the reasonable prices that it's at right now. The prices on, as far as freeze-dried foods, have tripled in the last 3 years. If you get that stuff, it lasts for 25 years. And again, that means you won't pay in 3 years from now. If again, these worked for really great for disasters and things like that, you won't pay 3 times the price. You'll have it for another 22 years. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep if you want to support our independent channel and save $200 off on a 3-month bulk package of food. That's again, marfooglenews.com/prep. That supports us. We are independent. We're run on our own. We have you guys as our backup. The Mafia is our sponsor. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. Love you. And make sure to go over to Marfoogle TV. Subscribe right now. We're about to start a live show. We're going to talk in depth about all of these. Dex and I are going to go over everything else that's been going on in the last 24 hours. So this is, again, a short shareable video. I hope that you get this out to the masses, and I hope that you send it to somebody who really should be looking at preparing and getting extra stuff. Have a good night, guys. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.